And welcome back to Kinetic Energy 1085. Technically, this still falls under my category of weapons, guns, ammunition, etc. Military. I'm going to show you something you've probably never seen before, something you'll probably never see again, and then just explain some of the brief history about it. This is an actual Civil War sword, or saber, if you will, that has been passed down in my family, technically from son to son to son to son. And what you're supposed to do is when you become responsible and you get married, you take possession of this, you sign a contract that says you will never sell it, and it continues to get passed down to son to son to son to son. Just giving you some side visuals to this real quick. Let's talk about this part right here. This is called an eagle pommel. This actually is ivory. This 421 stamped on here, I don't know yet. I believe it's either a platoon, a model number for this sword saber. Horstmann, stamped right here, is the manufacturer of at least this sheath. Again, the eagle pommel says that this is an officer's sword or saber, if you will. You might not be able to see it, but there are ink engravings and markings on this blade. I kind of polish it every so often, every few years. Don't really keep it at the house just because of its rare quality. But I had an event today where I took it out and decided to probably polish it. You won't be able to see it here, but there is a king's head stamped right there. That means that is the company Gebruder Wayersberg. They started making swords or sabers in the 1400s. And if that is stamped on your sword or saber, it means it's one of the higher end swords or sabers that have been produced. As far as value for these things, value, it's kind of hard to say. When I researched it years ago, I found that maybe its actual value was less than $1,000. Looking up the internet, just trying to get more information on this thing. One of them sold for $2,250. It's an 1860 Horstmann Saber, which is basically this one right here. This model number that I found, basically because of this eagle pommel, the brass, and the ivory, is an officer's M1830. So this was an officer's sword. Of course, I talked about the king's head. So who did this sword slash saber belong to? It was a private in my family. I'm just going to tell you, the last name was Staub. That is not our, well, it's still in our family. However, very far distant from myself. And he was in the Charlie Company 202nd Regiment of the Volunteer Army in the Civil War in Pennsylvania. So basically, the story behind it was, according to my grandfather, who passed it along to my father, but of course my grandfather, this was passed down, of course, from his family. I believe the Staubs were somewhere on his side, and I guess the story was he killed an officer and took this sword and took it home and just started making it a family heirloom. So, just figured I'd show you all that and give you a little history, you know, just with all this talk about Civil War and things of that nature going on nowadays. I figured I'd bring this out from the bunker. I'll just call it a bunker, but, you know, basically it's in a bank vault. And just have a little how-to and history on an actual, authentic Civil War sword. I want to cover one more thing before we go. Next weekend's video, when I go back to the range, the outdoor range, we're going to do 2 videos. One of them is going to be the significant difference in shotgun barrels, one being your twist barrel or deer barrel, whichever one you prefer to call it, and your smooth barrel or your shot barrel. I'm also going to talk about limp wristing with a semi-automatic handgun. you can make a semi-automatic handgun fail to cycle by limp wristing it. And I'm going to induce it. Stay tuned for next weekend. Semper Fi again. Yup!